What you are about to see is the legend Douglas Murray absolutely eviscerate Marc Lamont Hill during a debate on immigration and the global refugee crisis. Watch carefully because our boy Douglas is about to cook.
And that I agree with you. I think that's the kind of pluralistic vision we should have. It's the kind of multicultural world I'd love to live in. I think you're right. I think the problem is oftentimes when refugees enter spaces, particularly in the West, we see their culture as corrosive. We see the very presence of Muslims as a challenge to our identity. We see the very presence of brown people as a challenge to our national identity. And as such, we worry about it and we have a collective panic about it. And I agree with you. I also don't like lots of tattoos or Speedos at the beach. But the difference is the way that is understood as a public performance is very different than the way we understand Islamicity or Muslimness. To say that in the West, we have a particular fear of that, and it shapes how we respond to the refugee crisis.
So Marc Lamont Hill was responding to an earlier point made by Douglas Murray, where he is asking the audience to not dismiss concerns of regular people when they raise concerns about the unprecedented levels of immigration into their countries. Too often people with these concerns are branded as racists and completely shut out of the discourse despite having valid concerns about the types of people entering their countries. This particularly when they may hold values that either do not align with the values of the country they are entering or in fact cannot coexist with those values. Now watch how Douglas responds.
Is there an over-exaggeration, Douglas, do you think, in the West, this fear of Islam or anything that looks so different to us?
No, I mean, the society I'm from is one of the most pluralistic and diverse societies on earth. You couldn't get a larger range of people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and languages than you have in Britain.
And
which
it's a
is
rich
why,
country.
once again, if I may push back against this thing you are pushing, which is that these are sort of uniquely bigoted, unwelcoming societies.
Not at all.
The evidence on this part of the stage would suggest that Britain is not,
If anything, I'm giving you the chance to tell us, from your perspective, what you find threatening or not about refugees coming to England.
Let me answer that by broadening, if I may. My suggestion would be, if we're to arrive at any kind of common understanding on this, is that we agree that, for instance, where there are people who pretend that everyone who arrives is a terrorist is barking mad. Okay? We can agree with that, but don't laugh at people with serious concerns about serious security concerns either. Because,
like what?
Well, because, you know, we had this in 2015 when certain officials in Europe said the likelihood that anyone coming on the boats among the 1.5 million people who arrived in Germany are going to be violent in any way is total, xenophobic fantasy. And everyone laughed until people started letting off bombs, until, like in Ansbach in Germany, they just had a suicide bombing outside a wine bar. And it just stopped being quite so funny. So all I'm saying to you is, you can agree with me that people who say that most people arriving are going to be violent are ridiculous. Yes, but also don't claim it's ridiculous for people to have serious and sincere concerns about what is happening. Because if you do, there's no way anyone's going to arrive.
And that is the reality. Absolutely, Mark. How do you deal with this? It is a reality. This is...
Douglas Murray excels in debates by fearlessly delving into the challenging topics that his opponents often shy away from or lack the intellectual depth to engage with. In this instance, Marc Lamont Hill attempted to steer the conversation towards portraying Western societies as inherently intolerant, despite the reality that they stand among the most diverse and hospitable regions on the planet. Marc Lamont Hill then attempted to undermine Douglas Murray's concerns about immigration rates by suggesting they lacked validity. Murray promptly countered by offering a compelling example to illustrate why such concerns are not only legitimate but also shared by a substantial portion of the population. He pointed to the alarming reality of Europe being besieged by various terrorist attacks, such as the tragic incident in Ansbach, Germany, where a 27-year-old Syrian asylum seeker named Mohammed Dalil, who had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, detonated a bomb outside a wine bar in 2016, injuring 15 people. For those of you who do not know who Douglas Murray is, he is a renowned author, journalist, and political commentator. Among his notable works is the 2017 bestseller, The Strange Death of Europe. In this book, he explores the cultural and demographic shifts occurring in Europe, particularly in relation to immigration, identity, and the future of European civilization. Murray argues that Europe is undergoing a crisis due to mass migration from Africa and the Middle East, which is changing the continent's demographics and cultural landscape. He raises concerns about the failure of European leaders to address these challenges effectively and warns of the potential consequences, including the erosion of traditional European values and the rise of extremism. Would highly recommend. That brings us to the end of this video. Please like and subscribe to see more.